Thanks for being with us on State of Belief Radio again.
Thanks for having me. So happy to be back.
How's the convention for you?
It's exciting. This is the first convention I've attended, and it is invigorating. There is so much happening all throughout the city, and I just feel very lucky to be here.
What's impressed you the most since this is your first one?
Oh, that's a great question. This moment that we're in feels so critical and historic and decisive. And I think all of us understand what's at stake right now in our country and what we're up against in terms of having now a candidate like Donald Trump, who has been campaigning on a platform of overt bigotry and hatred and has been so divisive in his anti-Muslim, anti-immigrant, anti-woman platform and his approach. And to me, what I've experienced here over the last couple of days is a real sense of urgency and a sense of moral imperative that all of us who care about our democracy and who care about the safety of our neighbors and family members and communities and who want to see the United States actually live into our country's founding ideals, that this is the moment that we actually need to come together and unify. And that feels tremendously important. And while I know that the primary season has been dramatic, as a democracy really ought to be, it's time now for us to gather ourselves and to really unify and support now electing Hillary Clinton and Democrats down the ballot.
Set what you just said as a backdrop or a context, and then talk about your organization so people will know what the relationship is.
Yeah. So Bend the Arc, a Jewish Partnership for Justice, and our 501c4 organization, Bend the Arc Jewish Action, we are a national Jewish organization that focuses exclusively on domestic public policy. So we work on issues such as racial justice, economic inequality, voting rights, criminal justice, LGBT rights, the core issues that many Americans and certainly American Jews care deeply about. And we've been working for the last 6 months at least, very specifically on making sure that Donald Trump is not elected President of the United States. It's what we've been doing with Bend the Arc Jewish Action. We've held national mass actions across the country. Just a few weeks ago, we did an action where over 3,000 people took action in over 50 cities to say that the Jewish community rejects Donald Trump and Trumpism and all that he stands for. We're now in another phase of our campaign where we're ramping up, where we're going to continue to do digital organizing, online media, other national days of action, and then we're also working to send Jews who are living in safe states into swing states to do voter contact with low-frequency voters as well as contact with Jewish voters who may not yet have made up their mind. And for us to really demonstrate that Jewish values are about reflecting the human dignity of all people. The Jewish values are about protecting the stranger. The Jewish values are about caring for the underdog community, those that are the most vulnerable, and that Donald Trump's presidential campaign and his candidacy and the movement that actually supports him are the antithesis of Jewish values. And that as people of faith and as people of moral courage, this is the moment where we need to really demonstrate our Jewish values by taking action, and that's showing up in the voting booths, talking to our friends, having these persuasive conversations, and ensuring that Donald Trump is not elected and that Hillary Clinton is our next president.
I want to ask you this question because I get asked it, and you're better to answer it than I am. How do you distinguish Jewish values from other values?
Oh, such a great question. Well, there are many values that are Jewish values that are also universal values. So values including a strong bond and sense of community, values that are about ensuring that those who are the most vulnerable or have the most capacity to be isolated or disenfranchised are actually protected. Values that are about using our power for good. Those are values that are deeply held within the Jewish tradition, and they're also values that are shared by many other faith traditions. And at Bend the Arc, we are an organization that roots ourselves in very much links ourselves with the prophetic tradition of Judaism, that understands that we have a sacred obligation to help heal and repair the world, and that this is actually something we feel compelled to do, but we know that we don't do that alone, that there are many other communities who feel equally as compelled to make sure that this is a just, equitable society. And I know actually many of the people that you interview on your show come from this shared set of values that are found in many faith traditions.
I've always been impressed by and I would consider the Jewish value, religious freedom, because the Jewish community has experienced the negative of religious freedom, not having it at all, and have sacrificed to see that it's there. Does that relate into your values, and is that a part of what you do at Bend the Arc?
Yeah, so I would say absolutely, in a couple of very specific ways. So one, we understand that all minority communities, and the Jewish community is absolutely a minority community, we're less than 2% of the American population, that all minority communities are safest when we live in a thriving democracy. It's one of the reasons why Ben the Ark has been so outspoken against Trump's anti-Muslim and xenophobic comments, because he's scapegoating a minority community and setting them up to take all of the blame for our country's problems when in fact they are not the ones responsible. And we know that that is an attack not on our community directly, but historically those kinds of scapegoating attacks have been used against Jews. And when we live in a democracy, it ensures that there's greater safety for all of us who are minority identity people. Secondly, we now are at a time where we're seeing so many laws that are using language of religious freedom as a cynical guise to discriminate primarily against LGBTQ people, but also people living in non-traditional family structures, people like single moms or divorced people, that all of these laws that are supposedly in service to religious freedom are in fact absolutely manipulative laws that are using the concept of faith to hide behind overt bigotry and discrimination.
Well, you're so right, and I'm really sick of people who are giving religious freedom a bad name.
It's terrible.
And I think what they're doing is they're setting religious freedom over against civil rights.
Absolutely.
And it's not good for either.
Absolutely. And it's another example, a very clear example of how people of faith exist along the political spectrum. However, the conservative political people of faith have done a much better job in essentially owning the narrative arc, owning the framework of religious values in action. Mm-hmm. And progressive people of faith now must actually reclaim that space, and to say that religious freedom and being people of faith, we also have and hold progressive values. In fact, those values are at the center of what it means to be people of faith. And that is a space more and more that I see a growing movement, which I think is tremendously exciting.
How long have you been at Bend the Arc now?
So long that I almost don't remember. Over 12 years, almost 13 years.
Yeah, that's I thought. Are you having fun doing what you're doing?
I love what I'm doing. I feel blessed. I actually feel very called to do this work. Good. I've been doing social justice work now for 30 years, uninterrupted. I, for most of my life, did social justice work in a secular context, doing racial and economic and gender justice work in a community context in organizations that were phenomenal. And 12 years ago, I made the decision to do my social justice work in a Jewish context so I could integrate my spiritual commitments and my social justice commitments. And it's been the most meaningful expression for me of what it means to be a person truly engaged in this world, trying to make a difference and trying to also live an ethical life and create a better future.
Oh, that's a great way to say it. One last question. If you had 2 or 3 minutes with Donald Trump and you could say to him anything you wanted to say, what would you say to him?
Wow. I'm just pausing because I want to think how I'd want to say that. You know, my inclination is to, from a human level, just let him know how hurtful his leadership has been, and the consequence that I believe he understands. I suppose if I was giving him the benefit of the doubt, maybe he doesn't fully understand it, but I would want to sit with him and actually express to him the fear that he's created in communities. I'd want to express to him the actual physical danger that he's put people in, the degree to which he has unleashed a movement who had sentiments of racism and xenophobia already within it, but he's now given that movement permission to be much more dangerous and overt. And I would want to look him in the eye and just tell him as a human being to another human being that this is, it's devastating. And I don't believe that I would persuade him in any way, shape, or form, but I would actually want him to sit with the reality of his decisions.
I wish he could hear you. Listen, I hope this is just another in a long conversation that we have. It's great to speak with you.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.